Welcome to Reap What You Sow. My name is Seth Schaefer, and I am here with a legend, Mr. Denny Seiwell. Welcome.
Hey, Seth. Good to see you, man.
Good to have you here. So,
Yeah.
For you guys who don't know this legend, I will explain it to you because the guy's got a laundry list when it comes to things that he's accomplished, and a lot of them, I'll boil it down for you, is that when it comes to drums, the man is a machine, and he's worked with some of the greats, and a lot of the stuff he's done too is stuff you didn't even know that he was the one behind all the good stuff too.
That's true.
Yeah, some of the we were just talking about before we started, some of the small jingles, some of the small stuff that you've probably heard a million times you don't know, but this man, I can't say enough about him.
Fly the friendly skies of United.
There you go, jingle, another one that people don't know that you were on. So, to give you a brief synopsis of our guest today is that he's played drums for, you were in the band The Wings, Paul McCartney. He's played with James Brown, Janice Joplin, just a few. And then there's, how many more? I mean, there's tons of people.
Yeah, we could sit here for the next 20 minutes. Billy Joel, John Denver. I mean just tons of records.
The list goes on.
Yeah.
And
I was there at a great time in history for music because we made records every 2-3 days. We'd make another record in New York.
So, well, now I know the story goes with you and Paul. You were a studio session guy in New York, and they found you, and next thing you know, boom, we got to have this guy, and then you wrote it out. Now, one of the questions I have for you though is, how do you get into the studio session side of a musician versus being in a band and trying to pursue this other part? Where does the session part come in?
Right. Well, in those days in New York, if you had talent, people saw it, and then you started getting calls for the good work, the recording work. Because I was working in a jazz club at the old Half Note with Al Cohn and Zoot Sims, and it's really a high prestige job that doesn't pay any money, but it gives you a lot of visibility. And the guys used to come down Sunday night. The cats would come down, and they'd see who's the new kid playing with Al and Zoot. And through hearing me play, they said, wow, this guy is really good. And it was an interesting time because rock and roll was becoming the new pop culture, and music was going away from swing a little bit and more into this straight rock and roll kind of light pop music. So it was interesting, and all the commercials were going that way. And all my heroes, Mel Lewis and Grady Tate and all these guys, when they played the pop stuff, they kind of swung it a little too much. And because I'd been in Brazil when I was in a Navy band, and I heard this Brazilian music that I went crazy over, and they play it, it's a different, real straight kind of thing. I started getting calls for the jingles, and I'm taking work away from my heroes. I hated that part of it, but so that's how it happened. You get in that. It was amazing how it grew. Pretty soon you're doing 3 jingles in the morning and 2 record dates in the afternoon and the evening, and go work in the joints at night. And after a while, you start climbing up the ladder, and you're getting the better calls in town, and you're working all the time. And then when Paul came to town, he asked this guitar player, I can't think of his name now. He's a folky. I don't want to blow it. So anyway, this fellow gave Paul a list of the guys that were doing all the best work, and he set up this weird audition, and I came not knowing it was an audition for Paul McCarty. Yeah, in a basement, dirt floor and everything, crap set of drums, and I walk in, I see Paul and Linda sitting in the corner. Geez, you're Paul McCartney. He says, yeah, I know that. And he said, do you mind playing for me? I'm going to make a record in town. I'm looking for drummers. That's how it started. So he was going to actually hire 3 drummers. I was going to use me for a week, Donald McDonald for a week, and Herb Lavelle for a week. Herb did all those Motown records. He was great. And Donald McDonald was one of the finest drummers I ever heard. I love Donald. And so when I heard that, I said, well, I'll do a couple of songs and it'll be over. But during the first week, Paul said, man, this feels right, so I'm going to cancel the other guys. Clear your time for the next 6 weeks. And I did, and we did, and that was Ram. And then, yeah, the record came out. It went to #1 or something. And a couple months after it came out, he said, hey, how about taking a vacation, bring your wife, come over to England, just hang out. And then he said, I miss having a band. Do you want to put a band together? Count me in. And the rest was history.
Wow. So you start playing in the studio sessions, and this is where it leads you. After this chapter closes, where do you go after that? After the Wings?
Yeah, what's interesting about it is, as a studio player, the challenge is you go in every day and it's something totally different to do. And you kind of get into that head. But when you join a band, you got to put on a different head. You just got to think differently and think about just the overall whole, okay, we're going to be recording this, we're going to be doing it live, and it features this guy and that guy. And you take on a different role. And so I'd gotten to that place where I really put that together, and it was fine. And then I left the band, and I said, geez, I want to go back to the studio world because it's so challenging. But I didn't want to go to New York, so I came out here, And it was weird, though. When I get to L.A. after leaving England, they thought I was an English rock and roll drummer, not that I was a trained classical jazz real professional. So it took me a long time to break in out here, even with the big name I had in the business. So it took me a long time, and you make friends. You play on a few sessions, guys hear you, the calls get better.
You restarted from where you were before.
I had to start all over again.
And even a little more challenging this time because you didn't start off with the same, they know you as the jazz guy.
Right.
They only know you as
right.
rock and roll.
Yeah.
And then now and then even now you have your own band and you guys are doing really awesome jazz.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see your transition where when you move here, you actually had to start over, and then you had a little bit of an obstacle because you really weren't the rock guy, but you knew how to play it.
And then not so much in the last 5 years, but the last 15, 20 years, I ended up playing in the orchestra, doing a lot of movie soundtracks. 110-piece symphony orchestra. I'm one of 7 or 8 percussionists in the back of the room, reading incredibly intricate movies. I did a lot of scores for James Newton Howard, Waterworld, Atlantis, Dinosaurs, these kind of movies. And they're, like you make a mistake, they kind of look funny. They look at you and they say, hey, come on, man, we got 110 people here. We can't afford mistakes. You make 2 mistakes, now they really start looking at you. You make 3 mistakes, you're out. They never call you again. So not many rock and roll drummers get to do that high level of playing, and being able to read and interpret the music and playing it exactly as it's written.
That's what I noticed when I watched you play is that you keep notes and you right?
If I'm learning new, like I have a gig on the 2nd and the 4th with Mike Garson, who is David Bowie's piano player. So this thing, we're going to be doing some pieces from Paganini, a jazz trio version of that. We're going to be doing some Bowie songs, and then some straight ahead jazz stuff with the trio.
So you gotta read while you're playing.
Well, I got to make notes because they don't have time to rehearse all of this material. So I have to sit down and learn the songs, and wherever there's stops, breaks, different bass drum parts, different what have you, I'll just make little brief notes, a cheat sheet. So when I go to rehearsal, I know where I'm at.
That is so challenging, I think, to and even it's impressive to be able to read the music alone, to be able to read the music and put it onto a drum set, because I think that's one of those things where a lot of people pick up the drums and something just feels natural, feels right. You start playing, and then if you're doing jingles and and then you're playing live and you're also recording stuff, you're just reading music all day, and you just show up and you just play what they want.
Yeah, it's like second nature. It's like reading words, notes and words. It's the same thing after you do it for a while.
Right.
But I started when I was 5, and I studied when I was 7, learning how to play marches. Goofy stuff like that led me down the road. So I was comfortable reading music.
Wow. Yeah,
Excuse me.
that's one of those things that I don't think a lot of people think about, is that now, like, being able to read music, I think, is rare in comparison to how it was previously.
I've been teaching for the last 15, 20 years now, and a lot of pros will come to me to see if I can just get them into learning some basic reading, so when a chart gets thrown at them, they don't feel lost. They can do it,
Music is it's interesting, especially I think with strings. It seems that it makes more sense, but then when you're doing it on a set, that's where I think it gets a little fuzzy.
Well, that becomes, you see the notes and you interpret what they really mean by the notes. Sometimes I've gone on sessions where they used a computer to print out the drum thing. You can't possibly play what the computer prints out, but if they just give you the pushes, the starts, the stops, the dots, the ties, then you know what the rest of the band is going to be playing, and then it's up to you to interpret that and make it sound right on the drum set.
So then you get to hear what the band is playing, and then you put the drums on it.
You're putting it on while the band is playing. They
Right.
They want it the first take.
Wow.
They'll do a run through, get the sound right. Okay, red light, here we go. Bang, you're on. Don't mess it up. That's why you become a session man, because you get it right away. You save them time and money, and you give them quality.
Right, and you just come in and you do the work.
Yeah.
Well, so now, when you're a session guy recording, are you also a hired gun for stage? Like, oh, we got a band.
Occasionally.
We got a show tonight, and our drummer has mono.
Occasionally,
Here's the thing.
yeah.
Can you show
well,
up?
like
and
Kenny
play?
Wayne Shepherd. I love Kenny Wayne. His drummer, Chris Layton, who's one of my favorite drummers of all times. When Chris ran into, he had a thing where his boy was sick or something, and he couldn't make a couple of shows. I kind of learned the show, and I'd sit in with them once in a while. And Kenny asked me why don't you learn the rest of the show? Sent me some live tapes. So I learned the show. So when Chris has to take off, they fly me in. I do a couple of nights with him.
So you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is challenging.
Not really.
I mean,
Not when you've
for
been
someone looking out on the outside, that's impressive.
But when you've been doing it forever, it's just
it's
a breath of fresh air is what it is. You're doing something completely different.
Yeah,
that's what's great about it.
It is. I can imagine it being a creative challenge, because if you are, one morning you're playing jazz, and then that afternoon you're playing rock, and then the next day you're playing reggae.
Yeah,
it's a good musical.
I love that. That's a complete day for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because most people will play the same music that they like to play, and that's it. Not a lot of people experiment outside of their comfort zone, because it's hard and it's different, and you may not even really like it. So you just stick to what you know.
I don't have a comfort zone.
Yeah,
I like it all.
Give me music.
I love it all, man.
So if I was to get in your car and hit play on your stereo, what do you listen to? What do you like to listen to?
Right now, I mean, I listen to the jazz station on Sirius. I'm waiting for them to play my record, But I listen to a lot of that, and I got a bank of CDs in my car, But I have some big band music. One of the artists I recorded with years ago was a guy named Jerry Williams, Scary Jerry Williams. There's a record called Gone, Gone, and I think it was on Warner Brothers. That was amazing, though. Jeff Beccaro and I played drums on it. Jeff played on half the tracks, I played on the other half, and he had Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn and a host of just luminary musicians on it. It's one of the finest records I ever made. He's really a talented guy. Unfortunately, he had so many problems with things you shouldn't be messing with.
Yeah.
He died very early.
That's always challenging.
Yeah.
The interesting part, I think, with music is when you get to sit down and play with people that you never got to play with before. I always look at it as almost a second language.
Yeah.
You get to really know someone through playing with them, and even like some people that I see that I've been lucky enough to play with, they don't look like the music they play.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. Sure.
There's some guys I've met, and I'm like, one guy in particular is a guy on the East Coast, and he's a really good friend of ours, and he's a chef. He's probably 5'5", real little guy. His name's Chef Egg. Anyone go try Chef Egg. He's the man. He shows up. He cooks food at your parties and stuff. But he plays real funky drums and reggae.
Yeah.
Does not look like it.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't look like it at all. He just looks like a guy who'd play probably more like rock or
Right.
maybe jazz. I don't know. But then he shows up and he's playing this real funky stuff. And you're like,
Yeah.
Chef Egg. And that's one of those things that you really can build a bond with someone when you go and play music with them. And I always think that's the best thing to do with someone. Is like,
one of the funnest things for me especially, though, is when you're playing with a bunch of guys that you haven't played with before.
yeah.
And they kick it off, and you do your thing, and they all turn around and smile. That's when you know you're home, you know.
We have a stage on the East Coast location, and we have about it's a 12 by 16 foot stage. We have
Right.
some amps, and it's a pro setup. It's beautiful. And we used to do this thing a couple years ago called Music Monday, and we just invited all these musicians that were clients and friends of ours down, and everyone would just rotate playing instruments, and some guys would play a couple instruments and would just mix and match. And it's this eclectic group of people who play different styles of music,
Right.
and next thing you know, it all merges into one.
Sure.
And it is the coolest thing to see.
Yeah.
Some guy shows up with a violin, and you're like, whatever, get in.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
next thing you know, you got this really intricate thing going on where the drummer used to play metal, but now he's doing
Yeah.
little hints of it. And
Yeah.
that's just really, really
That's
cool.
why we do it.
Yeah, hey,
That's why we do it.
I get it.
It's full of surprises, and you never know what's going to turn out.
And that's the fun part.
Yeah.
And it's just a way to shut off your brain from everything else, and you enjoy what you're doing now.
When you're truly into it, you're not thinking. You're in a zone.
In
I
the
love
groove.
that. And people would pay to get there. You know, just it's an outer body experience. Out of body, you know, whatever.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
When we played music together, it was one of those things that you're just present. You're forced to be present because
Yeah.
you have to know what's going on.
Yep.
And that is just
That's
it's
why I
hard to
love
get
my
there.
trio so much. I played with a bunch of different guys. I had a buddy of mine said, bring some different people in on a Wednesday night. Just play some jazz in my new club. I went, okay, yeah, that'll be fun. So I tried different combinations, you know, and they were all good. But this one night I had John and Joe, my guitar player, John Cudini, and Joe Bagg, my organist. And he brought his little portable organ in, and I always wanted an organ trio anyway. And we started playing, and I saw that, oh my God, this is magic. You know, we don't even have to look at each other. We just go to these places and we play these hits together like we rehearsed, and we didn't. You know, and I said, this is magic. So let's record it.
Let's start the band.
Yeah.
What I've noticed with you guys too is the dynamic range in what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
From that real soft.
Yep.
And then it starts growing, and it's really one of those things that starts to take off. And I think that is one of my favorite things. We talked with Joey a couple of weeks ago, and he said,
Yeah.
check out your stuff.
Joey, he gets a medal, man. And Joey Santiago from the Pixies, dear friend, a mutual friend. When we finished our record, we invited him over. He brought his boy over to the studio, and we had like a listening party just to check the stuff that we recorded before it was onto the
Put out,
mix, you know.
yeah.
And he sat through that. I mean, that's really nice of him to do that, because it's not his style of music. But when you experience music that's good music, it doesn't matter what style it is, and if you're open to that, you're going to become so much richer as a player and as a musician.
Someone invited me to opera.
Yeah.
Not my thing, but I said yeah, and I went.
Yep.
And it was powerful.
Oh yeah.
Powerful stuff, and you're just listening to all these voices, and man,
And people that train all their lives to
perform
to
this.
make this performance. Yeah.
Their voices are booming.
Oh, yeah.
The pipes they have, it is insane. Where it's an auditorium and there's no mic, and it's just and you're like,
Yep.
wow. And I do believe that when you get the chance to start to listen to some other stuff and really listen to it, it's amazing. And when you start playing an instrument, you'll notice yourself listening to that instrument intensely, and then even pulling out of that and going, okay, well, now let's listen to this part of the music. And
that's like me when I was a musical snob. I wouldn't listen to the early Beatles. Come on, man. And then I heard the White Album. Of course, had a little wine and I had a little weed or whatever it was in those days. But I heard that White Album. I said, oh, my God, these guys are impresarios. And then I went back and found the rest of their catalog, and I went crazy, Then I was.
And you start playing with one of them.
Then I end up playing.
It's crazy how it all worked out for you. But I think that it's awesome to see the journey that you've had through everything.
Been pretty good, pretty interesting journey.
Pretty good run. I mean, most of your life you've been a professional musician, and
my life.
That's it. You knew that
we were talking before. The only thing I've done other than play the drums and make records is a little short stint doing voiceovers, and I never had to go work in a factory or do anything other than what I love.
That is awesome.
So it's not work; it's play.
It is, and it just so happens to pay, and that's
sometimes.
Sometimes
it doesn't pay.
Well,
and that's okay too.
The cool part though is being able to do what you love and do it the entire time. That's just magical,
right.
And I think there's a part that when you really truly believe in it and you practice and you do the stuff that people don't want to do. If you're like, I want to be a rock star, you're not going to take on the jingle. You're not going to take on the jingle work.
Right.
You're not going to take on this stuff. And when you do all that stuff, you say yes to every opportunity. Look where it got you. Gave you a great ride and still riding.
This is my 50th year of making records.
Wow.
50. And every day I sit down at one of my drum sets that's set up in the house and I look for something new. It's always a challenge unless I'm doing something new or improving my craft in some way, shape, or form. Then if I'm stagnant, I don't feel good about it.
Right.
So I'm always looking. I'll be inspired by something I've heard or listen to some of these young drummers give these clinics. They play more notes in one song than I've played in my career, And I'll find the good parts of it and say, well, why can't I do some of that, incorporate some of that into some of the styles? And this day and age, drummers are getting to be a little more into the solo work. Where they'll point to the drummer and say, hey, you got it for a little bit. And it's after making hundreds of records, we just lay down the time. We were just, but now I get to explore a little bit and see if I can use all of this training and all my creativity and come up with something that means something. And that's another thing, though, on the record. I didn't want to play a lot of solos. Both John and Joe said, come on, man. People want to hear you as a jazz artist. They don't want to hear what you did with Paul McCartney.
They want to hear you.
So there's going to be, let's put it at a vamp at the end of this tune where you go nuts, go play some drums over it. And every other track, if not more than that, more than half the tracks have drum stuff on it, and I'm very pleased with it and really proud of it.
You should be. It's really good. And I think I told you is that the one day I was downtown and your record was on my CD player and I had all my windows up and I'm driving downtown.
Oh, you didn't tell me. That's great.
And I'm looking and the music was syncing up with the outside surroundings. And it was great. There's like a guy walking down the street carrying a bag and it's and man, oh gosh, it was just
cool.
It was so good. And you see a guy on a bird scooter and you're just like, this music is just, and it was really nice because there is no vocal, so your imagination starts to just kind of go, and especially at nighttime, I love when I'm driving at nighttime when that stuff comes on. I'm like, oh, it's hands down, it's one of the nice things to listen to.
Soundtrack of life.
Soundtrack of life. There's your next album.
Yeah.
TM.
I think it's been used.
But it did. I mean, come on. But the other parts I think that are neat too is, from doing the research and getting to know you and stuff, the name of the album is Boomerang, and it's from you being a jazz player going into something else, and now it's all coming full circle right back to you.
You throw a boomerang out, it comes back. That's kind of what I did with my jazz career. I always used to use a line. I said, I was a jazz musician until I played with a Beatle, and it's funny how a Beatle can really fuck up your jazz career. I hope you can say that on.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. It's
But yeah,
free.
that's one of my favorite lines, and it's true.
Yeah.
And we were having a hell of a time picking a title for the record. We were going to call it, one of the tracks is called Midnight Meatballs.
I like that. That
Yeah,
story's funny too.
I liked it. Yeah, the story. John came home and there was a plate of food for him. His wife left him some meatballs. But it's funny. I went out to see a friend and said, we're having a hell of a time picking a name for this. He says, why don't you call it Boomerang? I went, wow, that's interesting. Yeah, Boomerang. You throw it out, it comes back. And that was it. So we're going with it, man.
It's awesome. Now, some of the other stuff I wanted to ask you about was about more of you. We've gotten into a lot of music stuff, and that's awesome because I think that is a huge part of you.
Absolutely.
But what else? What else do you like to do? What do you do for fun? What do you do besides music?
Oh, I used to be a good golfer. Now I'm just a really crappy golfer. And my wife and I was telling you earlier, we're married 52 years, so we spend a lot of time together still. We still love each other.
That's awesome.
It made the journey a lot easier and more pleasurable.
Sure.
She's the best. She's French. I picked her up on the French Riviera when I was in the Navy band over there. She didn't even know I was in the Navy.
Wow.
And we got married.
Because you speak French too, right?
Yeah, I speak
enough.
I know enough to get in trouble or get myself out of trouble. But no, I have a pretty big vocabulary. My grammar is terrible, but I always think one of these days I'm going to sit down and really learn to do it properly. But I said, it's good enough. It's good enough for now. But fun stuff. I mean, I still like to. I've been in recovery for a long time, and what's fun for me is helping some of the new guys that come into recovery too. That's really fun for me to watch the light come into their eyes after they come in from the dark past and stuff. And a lot of musicians come to me because they know that I stopped all that crazy stuff, and so that's fun for me too. And it makes me feel it. There's just a connection with everything, with the music, with life, with everything when I can help somebody else. And the longer you stay on the planet, you realize that being of service to mankind is really important. And when I first woke up one day, I realized that I was a taker. And over time, I learned how to become a giver rather than a taker. And every time I give something of myself to another human being, I just feel like $1 million. It's like playing a great drum solo. I can relate it, or recording a great record or doing a great show,
It's when you give, it's the boomerang effect.
That's right.
You give, and then next thing it comes out, you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. I've heard through the grapevine that you are a pillar of the community. Yeah, you are. I mean, look, a lot of the people I've talked to, they have great things to say about you and in your involvement.
I've earned it.
It's good.
I've earned it. Yeah.
It's a long time.
Take it seriously, yeah.
And it's really important. And a lot of people say that you're the guy to go to when it comes to that stuff because you have the experience. You've been all over the place and you've made it work for so long without it, and it looks like it's gotten even better and better and better. And
it's done nothing but a miracle for my whole life, the whole overall life. I mean, it showed up in every corner and every aspect of my life today. So I'm beyond grateful. Yeah, it's a good thing.
And it seems like it's kept you in a good headspace. And really, I think part of it too is what it does for your music. You feel a lot more when you're not getting fucked up. You feel all the emotions, and then when you get to sit down and let them out, especially as a drummer, I feel like there's a little more you get a lot of you get a lot out because you're actually doing something pretty physical.
You raise the awareness and the sensitivity just through being you rather than somebody that's kind of Well, I made a lot of records back in the 60s. They're still on the radio today, and we were all fucked up for all of those records.
Right.
They bring booze and drugs in for us.
Crazy. It sounds like the perfect recipe until one day it's not, right? That's one day.
Yeah.
It's no longer fun.
But this has been a real interesting journey, I must say. And I get to meet new friends like you and sit around and talk and doing podcasts and go on CNN.
I saw.
Wasn't that wild?
I saw that. Yeah.
It's really a thrill that when you don't expect something and you just do your job, you shut your face, be a nice guy, be kind to people, the universe smiles on you.
The guy's got wisdom. You got some wisdom. I can see it on you.
Took a long time, but I got a little bit anyway.
That's awesome. And you're right though. A lot of the stuff you talk about giving back and trying to help people and things like that. There is I believe there's a direct correlation with what you're getting with how much you're giving.
Yeah.
And if you're unhappy with the way that things are for you now, you're not giving enough or doing enough for other people. And it's hard to explain to someone when you don't have a lot that if you give, you'll get more, especially because a lot of people get in that little selfish zone of like, things aren't working for me. I need to focus on this. And sometimes the answer is the opposite.
Yeah.
You don't. Well, now one of the other questions I have is about fashion style. Now, we were talking before this, and I want to touch on some of that stuff because back in the day, you're a wild dresser.
Oh, man.
Wild dresser, stylish guy. You had all kinds of crazy stuff. So give us a little bit about the stuff you were wearing then, and then kind of now where you're at and what you like to do and what,
Well, now I'm 100 pounds heavier. But back in the day, man, McCartney used to send us into Dougie Millings, the old Beatles tailor. We'd have all this crazy stuff made up. And a cowboy suit that I had made to wear for the Live and Let Die premiere. It was just amazing. Beige suit with a great lining and everything, inverted pleats and belt across the back. I mean, just crazy stuff. Is this
the one that with the no sleeves? Is that what you're telling me?
No, that was in Japan when I was with Astro Gilberto. In those days, when you go to Japan, the first thing that happens, you check into your room and this crew of guys comes up and they bring all their samples up and everything. You want to have a suit made, you want shirts made, and they make it up in a couple of days' time. And I had a sleeveless suit with no collar, no lapel. And it was long and thin and tailored, and it was really light beige and tight pants with little bells at the bottom. And they made up this, it's kind of a cowboy design shirt, just, with that little cut over the pockets. I don't know what they call that. Yeah, the Western cut. Mm-hmm. But they made these incredible shirts with nice full collars. I had a wine-colored shirt, a lavender shirt, and something else. They were like $10 each. The suit might have been $100, $150. And
wow.
Of course, I was making $300 a week then too with Astrud. This was 1970. But so we had all of this weird stuff designed. And when I first met my wife, I used to get suits made around the corner from her house in Nice, France. It was Chez Ricri, and it was just such beautiful French tailoring and all that. And then I get older and bigger, and I can't wear anything anymore. But I've seen some of Seth's stuff here, and boy, there's some beautiful stuff, and I'm really looking forward to getting into some of his clothes, man.
It's gonna be fun too.
Yeah.
They call me the Houdini of suits.
Yeah, man.
The optical illusion. I'll make you look 100 pounds slimmer with just
seen,
the clothes.
Well, Joey doesn't need it, but I've seen it with some of the stuff you've made. It's really,
and he's
really
a fun one to
quality.
work with, man. He likes some out there stuff.
Yeah.
Which is pretty. Well, it makes my job fun.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when you get someone that wants to be a little more adventurous. You're like, okay, I can do that. And
one of the hippest things I ever made when I was with McCartney, we had Paul said, "Here's some money, go get some clothes made for the next tour. Just get some goofy stuff." And I went to Granny Takes a Trip in London on King's Road, and they had like a short waiter's jacket with long sleeves, and a shawl lapel, and it was maroon velvet, a real dark maroon velvet that was so nice. And I said, can you make me a pair of pants, skin-tight pants, no room for pockets or anything, you know? He says, yeah, man. So I had this suit, and I wore green and white scallop boots with it, or my high-heeled red boots that I picked up in Paris. That was great fun when I could.
Were you playing drums in these boots too?
Oh, yeah, man.
Wow.
Yeah, the heel is good, but maybe a 3-4 inch heel. But when you put it off the side of the pedal, it gave you more leverage, so you could bang down hard. I used to go through bass drum pedals
because you were hitting it so hard.
Oh man, whack, you know. But yeah, I love those days, you know. And now that I'm older, you know, I'm getting up there, and I still love fashion, though. I mean, I'd like to be able to look nice when I work, you know. And jazz is a different kind of thing, and I don't want to go the typical route where they get some artist design of a shirt that's like modern art on a shirt. You know, that's not my style.
That's not you.
Understated, subtle, but chic, you know. And that was one of the things about McCartney, man. He was just such a maven for fashion. He had all this stuff made, and he always wore great things, even if it was a pair of cowboy boots with a jeans and a T-shirt and a Shetland sweater, a sleeveless sweater. You know, he'd come up with, and Linda too. I mean, Stella McCartney got all her ideas from her mom. Not all of them, but
a lot of them.
You know, we've known. My wife held Stella backstage when she was 7 months old. You know.
Wow.
And now we can't afford one of her purses or a dress.
It's awesome.
But, yeah, I mean,
it's really
so
awesome.
I always admired that about Paul, because he always had a
good sense of fashion.
Yeah, great sense of dress, you know.
And they all did. They all seemed like they did the deal. They would dress. They knew that it was show business.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just put out good music. It was look cool too.
Yeah.
And they accomplished that.
I remember in New York when I was doing the sessions, in those days we showed up in a sport coat. And so I had all of these great sport coats that we'd buy at New York. There was a place called Bride Bart's and Dee Dee Dominic's and all these great places, and I was doing well. So then all of a sudden, it went from sport coats to throwing them all away and wearing football jerseys to work, you know, and sport teams, and all of this weird stuff was coming up, and playing live and this kind of stuff too. So I just
because everyone was dressed up playing music.
Yeah.
And then it started to go
like
a different
undress.
way.
I mean, or dress down, wear funky stuff. Only the hippie time came in, and you know, wear some leather vests and flowered shirts and big blousy sleeves and all this stuff.
All kinds of stuff.
So I had all of that stuff, but it broke my heart to get away from wearing a sport coat to work. You know, I thought it was great. It's like years ago when they used to go to Vegas. Everybody was dressed to the nines. The bands were comped. They would be the casinos were happy to give them food in the restaurants and give them nice rooms. And you all wore a tuxedo or a sport coat or a suit. Everybody looked sharp, you know. Then it just went to like, how bad can you dress and get away with it? That was the next step, you know. And now it's coming. It's still like, it's kind of strange what it is today, but there's a sense of. It's easier to look sharp and still look like you're in today, you know.
Yep. And I think a lot of the music stuff too is with how crazy can I look?
Yeah.
And because you're on stage and it's a performance, you have that ability to go and make something very out there.
Right.
And it looks good because of the setting that it's in.
Yeah.
You know, if you're walking down the street with some crazy looking outfit, doesn't really do the same justice as when you're sitting behind a drum set in front of a bunch of people. It's a little different context.
Right.
Really makes a lot. And one of the last things, I know we only got a couple more minutes here, and one of the last things I was going to ask you is, what advice do you have to people just in general? Anything you want to touch on, or anything that, you know, any advice for people in the music world?
If you've got a passion for something, follow it through all the way to the end. Just never give up. I mean, that's the best advice that I was given. And somebody told me when I was first going into my first session, he was an old-time bass player named Russ Savakis, who was also a contractor in New York. He took me up to see Dionne Warwick and Burt Bacharach with a small orchestra recording Do You Know the Way to San Jose? So I got to see the guys do that, and then I said, wow, that's really amazing. They were playing at a whisper, so soft, and everybody was listening. And so now I say, wow, when I get that chance, I'm gonna be ready for it. And Russ called me to do a session for him, and I said, well, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to come in with your ass through the door. What it meant was come into the studio humble, but know that you got the goods. Go in with a level of confidence that makes you feel not cocky, but that you know what you're doing. You respect what's expected of you, and you can pull it off. And that was a great piece of advice. And to this day, I mean, when
Still
I go
holds
into a new
true.
situation.
Still holds true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Sure, sir.
Man, that has been it's you have a fascinating story, and it's interesting on how everything has played out for you. And one of the big things we like to do here is interview people with interesting lives as well as their career choices and things like that. And with a lot of the stuff, people don't really like. I don't know about how people turn into how they turn into sessions and things like that. So thank you for elaborating, but thank you so much. You've been great. That's it for Reap What You Sow. Thank you so much.
Reap what you sow. That's awesome, man. This is a good guy, Seth, man.